I've been yelling a lot this weekend. I think a bunch of us have, so you'll probably outlast me if we start a yelling competition. Okay. And I'd rather not lose. So how's everyone doing here today? We all having fun this weekend? All right, so like one person's having fun. So welcome to the Kelley Armstrong Q&A. The Worlds of Kelley Armstrongs is the panel is being called. Yes. And what we're doing here is we have our mic set up right over there. So anyone who has a question, you can feel free to stand up and ask a question, and she'll answer it how she wants. Words, songs, miming. It's up to you how you want to answer the question.
Exactly. And if you've ever been to an event with me, you know that I may bring stuff to bribe you to ask me questions. You see this stack here? Those are bribes.
I was just going to glare menacingly. That way is much more effective.
It is. I have learned that years ago, you know, when you're starting out and you're doing your first events, and you go, any questions? There's dead silence. So I learned, okay, well, what if I start bringing, like, books or swag and saying, I'll give something to anyone who asks me a question. Yes, that works very, very well. Nowadays, I can get them without the bribes, but I still like bringing the bribes.
I'm buying my love.
Exactly.
But I think I'm going to start off with a quick question here. So I heard this weird rumor about you that you haven't actually watched Bitten yet.
Yes, that is true. And the reason is, and I do address this quickly right off the bat, because of course with the TV show out, I get asked questions about it. I'm not involved in it. I know absolutely nothing about what's going on. I've heard that season 3 is a filming. I've just sort of randomly heard that. It's a rumor. Apparently it is. So I don't have anything to do with the TV show. That rumor that I have not seen it, I'm sure I will someday. But I still write in that world. I wrote Bitten 17 years ago. I was at a con a few years ago, and it was a panel on crafting fight scenes. And they were going through the authors, and the moderator said, okay, Kelley, so in the book Bitten, you've got this fight scene, and it goes like this and this and this, and I'm like, they're going, that's vaguely familiar. I've written 32 books. Bitten was the first one of them. So yes, my memory of it is a little vague. And
I'm kind of picturing you just whipping out a folder going, okay, that was book 3, the fight scene was, it was a punch, then a kick.
And that means that when I'm still writing, so I've got, okay, so bribes, let's go into this pile, stack somewhere. Okay, this came out a couple years ago. This is Brazen. This is a leather-bound limited edition novella. It's a Nick novella. And graphic novella came out this year, Bounty Hunt. These take place like 12 years after Bitten, which means that if I was to watch the TV show with my really crappy recollection of that first book, I wouldn't know what parts were mine and what parts were theirs, and I would then be writing books and stories currently, and I could accidentally put in some small detail that is theirs and not mine, and readers would crucify me. So I'm sure I will watch it once I'm totally done writing for that series.
All right, so we do seem still have a nice lineup here. So we'll start with the first question there. Fire away.
First of all, welcome back, Kelley. It was wonderful to see you again because you were here at a previous Hal-Con as well, and it was really wonderful to hear you then.
Thank you.
One of my favorite characters is Elena, and I find it really interesting to see her as a mother. I was wondering how you have seen her character development going from being a single person to now being a leader in her pack and also being a mom.
Mm-hmm. It was very interesting for me when book 6, Broken, came out. I started getting readers saying they were really sad to see that the series was over. And I could not figure out where this was coming from. There was nothing where I had said that it would end at six books, nothing that said that Broken was the last one. I finally started asking, what makes you think it's the last book? And they were like, well, she had kids. So therefore, all the adventures are over. As a mother, that's not how that works. So yes, it was for me, having her have kids and then continue on having those adventures, new challenges, and having her eventually go on to, yes, become Alpha, and not become Alpha because she is the absolute best in the pack, but nobody else wants the job. And that makes it all that much tougher. She is very qualified for it, but it is that sort of tongue-in-cheek knowing that you've got the job because nobody else wants to do it. So doing that transition kept her story going for me for quite a while. Now I will mention bribes because I do give you guys options on what you get. So you've heard I have Bounty Hunt, which is graphic. I have Brazen, which is novella. I have also Otherworld Secrets. This is the UK cover. This one just came out. This is a collection of Otherworld novellas and short stories, including a new Hope and Carl story. Also have, put this one aside. This is my middle grade. So this is the first in my middle grade trilogy that I co-wrote with Melissa Marr, Loki's Wolves. It is contemporary fantasy adventure based on Norse mythology. Middle grade means typically for ages 8 to 12. Omens, first in the Canesville series. This is what I am working on now. I'm halfway through it. At book 3, Deceptions just came out this summer, and it'll go to 5. Also for a book 1, this is my current YA series, Sea of Shadows, which is high fantasy based on medieval Japan. That one's third and final book comes out in April, I lose track. And finally, this is a Led Astray collection of my short fiction from all worlds and standalone fiction. So this is all types of short fiction from me. So those are the bribes. When you ask me a question, you then have to remember what I just listed and tell me what you want. So.
Oh, wow. Could I have the Otherworld one, please? Because that's my favorite.
You want the Brazen, right?
Yes, please.
Or
actually, the
Otherworld
collect-
Secrets?
The collection, if
Otherworld
possible.
Secrets, it is.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Come on up. Get my exercise here. Thank you.
All right, so we have our next question here.
Hi, I was wondering what the hardest part of being an author is.
Hardest part of being an author is staying being an author. I mean, it is so hard to get published. It really, if anybody out there is writing and you've heard how hard it is, it's just that hard. It really is. I've been writing all of my life. Bitten was my first published novel. It is the 4th novel I wrote. You will never see those first 3. They are really, really bad. At the time, I thought they were great. Now you could not pay me enough to show them. So you would think that after all that, and you finally get published, and then you realize you're only going to stay published for as long as you can keep on selling books. So it is every single book. It is something new, and it is trying to repeat that over and over now 32 times, and that is why you do see me changing up series and moving on. It would be very easy to stay with a successful one and just milk it until you've got every last drop out of it. I really believe that in order to stay creative and to keep giving the best thing I can give, I can really tell when it's time for me to change series. So that is the hardest part, is staying an author. Your prize? See, memory now.
This isn't actually for me. This is for someone else.
What does she read? YA, adult?
Yeah,
She reads YA or adult?
adult.
Adult. Okay, so I will give you Brazen. There's for her. Yeah, go.
You can really get that exercise going back and forth, Yeah. All right, next question here.
Hi, you have a really extensive bibliography, so I was just wondering, it's a two-part question. One, where does all the inspiration for all of these different books come from? And two, how do you keep your continuity straight?
I keep the continuity straight by not watching the TV show.
But I mean, like, from book to
Beyond
book.
that, it is tons of notes, and more notes. And the longer a series, obviously, the more I need. Trilogies are a whole lot easier to keep that going. I can go over the 3 easily. When you do get up to 13 books and countless short stories and novellas in the other world, it really is so many notes and charts and everything else. And then I would still be constantly having what I called beta readers, which were readers who probably know the series better than I do, who can go back and read, because it's so easy. You think you will never forget any of these details at all. I was writing, I believe it's Personal Demon, book 8. Carl had come back in, and it was his first book back since Bitten. So he was back, and he was in a scene where they were trying to talk to a maid at a motel, and she only speaks Spanish, and Carl says, "I don't speak Spanish." And then I go back and check my notes. In Bitten, it says Carl speaks 6 languages. If he is American, one of them is going to be Spanish. But it's those small things with a character who'd been gone for 7 books, and I had totally forgotten that detail about him. As for inspiration, I get it absolutely everywhere. I have more ideas than I could ever write, so it really is for me knowing, like I said, when it's time to end. To say with Canesville, I'm going to go to 5 books. I love this world. I could write more, but after 5, my creativity will start going down. So end it there, and jump out to one of those new ideas that I have percolating in there. What would you like for a prize?
May I have Omens, please?
Omens, good choice. Thank you.
Hi again, Kelley.
Hello.
It's a 2-parter. The first is, what is the most challenging or difficult character to have written to date, and why?
Okay, so most challenging or difficult character to have written, I think that probably the one that I find the most challenging would be Eve in the Otherworld series. And it was because she is my most kick-ass character, which means she is the least like me. She really is. Everything about her, from her world views to her political views, everything is not me. And that makes her very challenging to write, but it also makes it a lot of fun. That's really stretching for me, to sort of put myself into that mindset and think the way she would think. I always found was, I think, one of the most fun stretching exercises for me.
Thank you. Can I have the new book with the UK cover?
That one's gone.
Okay, then
Okay,
can
so
I
we've
have
got-
the short story collections?
Short story collection. So we've got, okay, good. Led Astray. Thanks.
We have our next question here.
Hi. So since you've branched out into the YA novels, have you integrated into the YA author community? Because some of them are kind of insane, like Maureen Johnson, just to be around.
So the YA author community, yeah, and there are all kinds of different sort of offshoots of the YA author community. When YA first started coming up, there was even this talk about there being a YA mafia. It is so strange. It is really rather high school, not among the authors themselves so much as just people looking in. And they would see that YA authors typically do hang out together. I am in 2 weeks going on retreat in Arizona with 10 other authors, all American authors. Most of them are YA writers. We do this. We go and we hang out and we talk shop, because there's not likely to be someone living down the street from us who is in our job. So as a community, YA writers really do that. They go on retreats. They organize their own events. They hang out far more, I find, than adult authors do. So for those looking in, especially those trying to get published in YA and failing, there was the talk of the YA mafia of authors who are all very, very cliquish and keeping other authors out. Nothing could honestly be further from the truth. But from a sociological point of view, I found it so interesting, because it really did seem like high school, where when you saw people bonding, it became that clearly they are forming a clique to keep everybody else out. But it is definitely a lot more community oriented, I find, than in adult fiction.
Yeah, I went to GeekyCon and someone gave Maureen Johnson a Segway and she nearly ran into someone and it was a whole thing.
Yes.
So.
Yes, there is. We know each other more, so I would know far more authors in YA personally than I know in adult. Prize?
Sea of Shadows?
Sea of Shadows, good one. There you go. Thank you.
Are you able to reach there, or need a hand?
How long have you been writing books?
How long have I been writing for? I have been writing for as long as I can write. I've been telling stories since before I was old enough to write them down. I think that's why I write so much, is that I grew up doing this. I grew up reading. I was a very early reader. My parents swear I was reading by 3, but I think I was just memorizing the books. But that turned into, I want to do that. I really want to be able to tell my own stories. So always writing. I got my first book. I sold the contract for my first book when I was 30. So that was many, many years of writing before I got something published. And what would you like? Loki's Wolves, probably?
Yes, please.
Good choice, yeah.
All right, we'll go with your question now.
Okay, hi Kelly. I
Hello.
just want to say I'm absolutely loving the Canesville series so far.
Good.
But what I'm wondering is, if you had to pick any character from any book, which one would be your favorite?
I can't do that.
No.
Isn't that like the which child do you like?
It is, and it really is almost like your kids, because you like them for different reasons. You're like, you're one kid you really love for the way he does this, and your other kid for the way she does that. And with characters, it's the same. It is that I like to be able to jump around. I think that's why I never stuck with a character for more than, say, 3, 4, 5 books. Is that not that I don't like them, but I think that if I had one that I was like absolutely love this character, I wouldn't change. But instead, I'm like, I really like working with this character. Oh, but what about this one over here? So Elena was always the easiest for me, because I wrote so much from her. I have gone back and I wrote a novella for her recently that will come out in January. And she's very easy for me to just flip back into her voice. Olivia is very easy for me, because I'm writing book 5, and I've written 5 in a row, so I can pick up her voice so easily. But then going back to those characters that I haven't worked with as much is equally rewarding. I just finished a short story for Paige and Lucas, and I have not written from them since Counterfeit Magic, so it's probably been 5, 6 years. And it was just really nice. It was like going back and visiting friends that you just had not seen in a very long time. So your prize is by default, if you want it, the graphic novella.
Sure thing, that'll be great.
Sure. So now I'm out of prizes. Do I still get questions? No. See?
And the line vacates.
They're gone. Everyone
All right, we
leaves.
need more prizes. We have a booth here, a nice little chair table here.
With water, unopened water. Come on.
All right, what's your question here?
Well, I kind of suspect an answer based off that one now, but what was your favorite series to write? Or like the world?
Favorite series, I mean, and I'll be honest, right now, Canesville, I'm just having such a blast writing Canesville. I'm on book 5, and I'm saying, I would like to go further, but I just know that now is the time to stop, and if I want to keep on going, write some novellas, short stories, sort of hold on to that. With the other world, I really enjoyed it. When I was writing book 12, book 13, I was still having a blast, and I was, again, going, I'd really like to keep on going. Maybe I should. But once I started writing Canesville, that sort of creativity flew back up, and I realized that I'd probably let the other world go on too long. That sudden burst of creativity that came with writing Canesville, that came with writing Sea of Shadows, that is now with City of the Lost. With writing new things, I just get that sort of kickstart of it, and that's really what works. So yes, right now, Canesville, I'm just having so much fun with it. It is my series where, because I was coming off of the other world, and the other world had done so well, I didn't feel like I had to do anything. I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. I could just totally have fun and throw in everything I ever wanted to put into a book, throw it all in, and just have a total blast with it. And yeah, it's been wonderful because it is, and has been for about 3 years ago now, my best-selling series over my YA, which is amazing, because as soon as I started writing YA, that jumped to my best-selling stuff. And this is the first time that something has topped it, which is really nice for what was for me just fun books. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you.
Oh, and your question now?
Hi. There's kind of two parts to my question.
Yeah.
Where do you get your inspiration for the characters in your book? And have you ever based a character on your book off of someone you know in real life?
Okay. Inspiration for characters comes from everywhere. I mean, sometimes it's the character that launches the book, and sometimes it is the book that then forms the character. In the other world, Elena came from a short story, and the short story came from me watching X-Files. It was their first season. It was their one and only werewolf episode. Typical big ape-like guy who goes around slaughtering people under a full moon. And I thought, that's not how I would do werewolves. So I sat down and wrote a short story with this female werewolf and said, this is how I would do werewolves if I was doing them. And then that was character turning into a thing. Same as at Canesville. I had the character of privileged young woman discovers she is adopted and the child of convicted serial killers. That was my character, and then it spun off into the world. Sometimes, though, it really is the world and then a character. What I'm working on right now, City of the Lost, which came out in eSerial this past summer, is small town in the Yukon where people go to disappear. So it is no fantasy, it is a mystery. I had that idea and then had to sort of back up and come up with a main character who fit that series. And have I ever based one off of someone I know? No, they would kill me. I think even if I made the character as flattering as possible, people would see the negative aspects of them. And I do know authors who have based their main characters on themselves. Not a good idea. Because what happens is it doesn't matter how wonderful your main character is. People are going to hate her. At some point, somebody is going to hate her. First review I ever read for Bitten, it came out in the UK first. This was 2001. Somebody said, hey, did you know there's this thing called online reviews? People have blogs and they review like books. Never heard of it. And they said, they did one of Bitten. And it got a good score. And it did for this site. So I thought, oh, awesome. I went on and read it. And the reviewer hated Elena. The line was, I kept hoping she would hurry up and die. Now,
Flattering, wow.
I can still remember that 14 years later. Imagine if I'd based that character on me. How much worse that would be if that was me. So yes, never base a character on yourself, because it doesn't matter how awesome that character might be. Somebody out there is going to hate that character.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm really short, so this is not so great. Okay. We're having technical.
You may want to pop it out of the top and hold it.
Having technical difficulties. Okay. Hi.
Hello.
I hate to sound cliche, but I'm a paranormal writer myself, and right now I'm working with vampires, but I really want to incorporate werewolves. But the only experience I have with werewolves thus far is Twilight, and we all know that doesn't really count. So I was wondering, like, how did you get your idea to sort of change it up, make it different but still in the same vein? Because I don't want to go the Twilight route.
No.
I don't want to do that.
What you want to do is look up folklore. Everything that I do comes from folklore. It comes from those old stories that people told themselves way back when. If almost every community that had wild canines has some version of the werewolf lore. They have some version of people who are part wolf, people who change into wolf, and it was their way of explaining inexplicable behavior. This person slaughtered 3 people. They can't possibly be human, therefore they are part beast, and the beast was almost always canine. And so if you're looking up into that old lore, and there's so much of it, there is, of course, the werewolf lore where they can only change on a full moon. There is the werewolf lore where they can only be hurt by silver. But that's only part of it. And if you go into a different culture, a different part of the world, you'll find something different. So nothing that I did with my werewolves is made up. We have yet to ever find the folklore that makes vampires sparkle. But it could exist out there. Normally, what we do is we go through all that folklore and say, okay, I like this, I don't really like this, and so we pull in bits and pieces of that lore and say this then is our beast. We've built our beast. And vampires too, because there are just as many cultures out there that have some form of vampire lore. I think my favorite one is the one, I believe it's South America. There is one that is a flying head with intestines that bites the feet of sleeping people and drains the blood. I think that would make a great paranormal romance.
One of my favorite vampire lores is the upside-down leprechaun that drains the blood.
And there is, and there's just so much. So if you do want to do something like that, just go out and get yourself like the giant book of your werewolf lore. There is out there. I think there is the Oxford book of it. Probably shifters, including werewolves and other things, and it'll have so many cultures takes on werewolves. You can pick and choose what works for you, and that will give you something different from Twilight and different from everything else out there.
And just to add, this is bad fangirl, but I've never read any of your books because there's so many I don't know where to start. Do you have any suggestions?
If you want werewolves, you start with Bitten.
And adult, yeah.
It's Bitten. Bitten is the first. So.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Do you often get people asking, where they suggest to start, or?
Yes, to the point, because I have so many books and so many series in different genres, I'm actually getting my website redesigned right now. And one of the things that I asked my designer is, could I do up, if I came up with a little quiz for where do I start or where do I go next? And she said, yeah, sure. So I came out with just a simple, like, do you like this or this? Do you like this or this? Because I have so many that you go on my book page and it's overwhelming. And just going, where would I even start? Like, what is YA? What is mystery? What is fantasy? So yes, I now have an app for that. Or I will soon.
I'm now picturing your web programmer going, oh, come on, she wants this? What?
I did. I used to be a programmer, so I said I could do that back in my old days.
With it.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
yeah. And I said, if it can be done simply, okay. If not, I could just do a simple, like, chart form. But she was like, no, that's just simple. So.
Next question here.
Okay, hi. So you did a project with Orca Publishing for like lower level readers.
Yeah.
I was just wondering what it was like trying to write this character without continuing a story that other authors were also writing. Like, how was the collaboration on that? Like.
Yeah. Okay. So Orca is a publisher who does mainly middle grade and what I would call young adult. So it's YA, but it often gears down a bit. And through them, I did a collaborative series. It was actually through Eric Walters and Teresa Toten came up with this idea of 7 authors doing a shared world and a shared premise. That premise being in 1964, an orphanage burns down. There are 7 girls aged 16 and 17 who are then emancipated and each given one clue to their past. So we each create our own girl. We had to have that same orphanage fire scene, and that's complicated with 7 authors. You have to do every last who is where. I wanted my girl to not be there. She had taken off at night, and so then nobody else could do that. And we're trying to arrange where is everybody, what does the house look like, what are the occupants like. Lots and lots of talking, and that's just for one chapter. And then thankfully we all take off on our own path. And when Eric asked me to be in on that, I said, sure. And I knew that he had done the 7 series for boys, and that none of them had any fantasy in them. So I said, don't worry, I won't put any of that stuff in my book. And he said, no, we want you to. They wanted every author to sort of do what they do naturally. So mine does have an element of that. I use retrocognition, which I'd never used, which is the ability to catch glimpses of the past. So that was the Secret series. And my book in that is The Unquiet Past, which takes place 1964, and mine is set in Quebec, which was a fascinating time to be setting something in Quebec. Thank you.
All right, so if these next 2 questions are quick, we can hopefully get through both of them before we're done here.
Perfect. Hi, Kelley. Thanks
Hello.
so much for coming again. You started off with Elena there in Bitten, and it was fantastic. And going into the second book, you can really see a lot going forward. You're introducing a lot more to us in the rest of the other world. Knowing what you were writing then, did you expect it to come back and finish with Savannah the way it did? Like, was Savannah always the end point?
Bitten was written as a standalone novel. It was never supposed to start a series. Because to me, it wrapped up. Yeah. I mean, everything basically wrapped up. And then after it sold, it even sold as the first of 2 supernatural thrillers, meant to be 2 separate ones. But after they got talking, they said, could you start it as a series? And I thought about it, and I said, I can't go too far with just werewolves. Mm-hmm. It's not enough for me. In order to keep on going, I need more than that. So I came up with the idea of this really awkward idea of they discover that there are other supernaturals, which some of them knew and just Elena didn't, which is the great advantage to doing first-person point of view. The reader only knows what the narrator does, and she did not know. So then it spun off in book 2, bringing in other supernatural types. At that time, introduced to Savannah, and she was 12. So I had a series, and I did. At that time, I never thought that it could ever go long enough for her to grow up. I got to be about book 5 or 6 and started thinking, you know what? I might actually be able to get this to the point where she's grown up and can take over the final book. And that was my goal then, was to get her to be 21, old enough to get into adult situations, and to have her finish up the series. So it really was a thrill for me to sort of see her grow up and become a woman of the other world.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have enough time for our last question here. I'm not going to be that cruel saying, oh, I'm sorry. You waited so long. You're done. No, go ahead.
It's a really quick question. Where did you get your boots?
Okay, I'll have to admit, I've been staring at these boots going, those are kind of amazing.
They're Fluvogs.
Okay.
Yes, I love Fluvogs because they are funky and they're so comfortable. You can see that they're big, like wide boots. They're very, very comfortable. So yes, thank you.
So we just have a couple minutes left. Anything last you want to add or say today?
That's it. Good. Thank you guys very much for coming out. It's been a great thrill to come back to Hal-Con.
Well, on behalf of Hal-Con, we're more than happy to have you back. So let's give her a round of applause, everyone.
Hal-Con.